I was born in a hospital in Newark, New Jersey. My parents lived in a place called Vailsburg, which was on the outskirts of Newark. And I lived there until I went into nursing school. Went to Catholic school and went to nursing school when I was 18 years old, to the same school that my mother went to when she was 18 years old. And my father was an electrical engineer. I had 2 brothers and 3 sisters. So we had a good family. My father was in the Navy in World War I. When I went into nursing school, when I was a probie, Pearl Harbor happened. And they put up a poster in the school office that said, "The Navy needs nurses." So every time I went into the office, I saw this poster that said, "The Navy needs nurses." In the meantime, both my brothers went in the Navy. And so I said, I might as well go in the Navy when I get finished, if the war's still on. And of course, the war was still on. So I signed up the day after I got out. I went to St. Albans, Long Island, which was like the 3rd largest hospital in the country, a Navy hospital. And they put us through training there. There were about six nurses in my group, and they taught us how to march and had, go through the rules and regulations and that sort of thing. And that took about 6 weeks, and then they put us to work. We didn't go to boot camp. We got our boot camp where we were going to work. Oh yes, we were taught by a Marine sergeant, and we were not military, and he would take us out and teach us to march. And if somebody made a mistake, they would laugh, and he would get really mad, and he would say, "All right, fall out." And he would walk away and leave us for an hour on the lawn. and that happened very often. So he finally, he was a Marine sergeant, and he finally just gave up and let us make stupid fools of ourselves, And we went right to work. So once they taught us how to march and all this and learn the rules and regs, they put us on duty. And so I went on several different wards until I landed on a ward called B11, which was paraplegics and quads. I was always afraid of B11 because the nurses used to say how hard the patients were because none of them could walk or they were all bedridden. So, and they used to talk about it. So I thought, I really don't want to ever go there. And all of a sudden, on one weekend, on a Saturday, they posted me for a B11, to work on B11. So I walked in the ward, and every person watched every move I made. All day long, they watched me. And that night I said, I really don't want to go back there tomorrow. But I said, I don't have any choice in the matter, so I have to go back. And when I walked in, nobody looked at me. They were sizing me up, I guess. And they nicknamed all the nurses. And you didn't know your nickname, but you heard the other nurses' nicknames because you could hear them discussing them, and they used the nicknames. So one day, I was washing the hair of one of the quads, and he said to me, "Do you want to know what your nickname is?" And I said, "Are you going to tell me?" And he said, "Well, we're not supposed to, but if you want to know, I'll tell you." So I said, I want to know. He said, "Her Majesty's battle axe." And I said, "What? Her Majesty's battle axe?" And he said, HMB. They were my initials. And that became my place. I was there for about 3 years. And that was a life-changing experience because most of the kids were paraplegics, but but also maybe a good third or fourth of them, a third of them maybe were quads and didn't move anything except their face, their head. I realized how difficult it is for some people, for some things. I hadn't come across anybody in my training who was that helpless and who required that much care. And so I just realized that I didn't understand how some people were totally dependent on other people. It was very good for me. We were lucky enough to have that ward got a lot of attention because those kids were so disabled. And so we would have a lot of celebrities come in and entertain them. And that was kind of fun in that ward. So
fire was a big deal.
Yes. And we also, the thing we dreaded the most was a fire. And because those kids couldn't get out of bed by themselves, they couldn't walk. So we all talked about it often. And one day the alarm bell rang and we realized it was our number. And one of the patient's sisters was in the kitchen cooking him some food, like a steak or something, on the stove. And she must have started a little fire in back of the stove. And we heard our number. And I said, "Oh my goodness, that's my number. There's a fire somewhere here." And all of a sudden, all our worries were for nothing. The corpsmen started streaming through the door to get the patients out of the ward. And we, like 20, came running into the ward to get them out of the ward. And somebody went in and got the fire out in the kitchen. And we never worried about getting help for that ward again. I had made very good friends with a lot of the nurses. Some of them who worked on B11 with me. And one of them was Ursula Fox, who came from California. And she finally got transferred to Japan. And I was afraid I was going to get transferred to Japan, and I didn't really want to go there. So fortunately, I did get transferred there. I kept up with all of them, and they're all gone. They're all gone. During the Korean War, I was at Cherry Point, and it was much easier. I mean, I just had a few wards and not many people as patients. It was a whole different picture than the hospital. I met my husband there. He got transferred there, and he was a OBGYN, and he worked down in the clinic. And after he was there, well, he came right at the same time as the general's ball came around. So he invited me to go to the ball, and so that did it. That did it. We started dating after the ball, and then we both got out the same day. I remember VJ Day because I was on 3 to 11, and I was on a neurosurgical ward. And they announced over the intercom that the war was over. And in 2 minutes, my ward was empty. And that happened all over the hospital. Everybody, all the patients and corpsmen just vanished. I don't know where they went. I'm assuming they probably all went out to the nearest bar, but I don't know. So it was quite a shock. I wandered around. I tried to call my parents, and I couldn't get any answer at my parents. And my parents were not people who wandered around, you know. And I never found out till the next day that they went into New York City, which they would never do. So they really decided that they needed to do that. They had my 2 brothers in the service and me. I learned a lot taking care of the kids. That a lot of them were injured early in the war, especially paraplegics. And And they were not complaining about the fact that they got injured early in the war and they were still in the hospital, still being treated. I learned a lot about people. You know, some of them are very pure as far as the way they treat other people, and others not so much. But there were more good people than bad. I kept up with a lot of those people, a lot of the paraplegics and quads, and it did affect my life. After I left the Navy, I got married. I was in Cherry Point when we decided. My husband came back from Korea, and he was just my boyfriend, you know. And we decided to get married, and we got married and started our family the next year. Even though it sounds strange to think that you can learn a lot about life from going into something like the service. The camaraderie is very interesting. If you want to do something like that, go into the service. Do it, because your life story. You add things to your life story as you go along, and you can do a lot of good in the service. We're the luckiest people in the world, I think, in this country. So, and freedom and democracy is our prime aim, and I think we do it well. My son Jimmy was an English teacher for 40 years. And so every time he came up to visit me, he would bring a recorder and say, "Tell me a story about such and such." And after a long while, he began to write a book. He wrote all these stories in this book. And it says Navy nurse, but he's got everything in here. My parents, my grandparents, everything. It's really a biography. If anybody thinks they're interested in going in the service, it's a great experience.